Leave me alone. Like, they don't even understand the benefit of doing anything in depth or of doing something really, really well. There's no payoff. The game doesn't reward that. You don't get, extra points for doing it as well as it could possibly be done. They're just going complete. So today this article came across my Twitter feed and it inspired me to sit down and make this video. This video is going to explain to you how the institution of government schooling, public schooling, is feeding the pathology highlighted in this article. The article's titled, "The Changing Face of Social Breakdown, Pathologies of Unruliness Are Being Displaced by Pathologies of Passivity." And it's that pathology of passivity I want to speak to. I want to talk to you about how I think the institution of public schooling has fed this pathology of passivity. It's not the only cause. There are lots of things. But remember that most people in America who are now adults making policy decisions in public policy, running the institutions themselves, running the businesses, basically running the society, attended these schools. And let's say they attended these schools 25 years or more ago. 25 years ago, John Taylor Gatto sat down and compiled a book full of his speeches and a couple of essays entitled "Dumbing Us Down." He did that 25 years ago. And the first section of that book is about the real lessons he teaches when he's a public school teacher. Now, he had been teaching. At that point, he had been teaching for 30 years. So 30 years plus 25 years, and you have my age. It means people my age, middle-aged, who are pretty much running the show in America, making the policies that affect us all, were probably educated in public school. Most were, the majority were, and were probably educated by even award-winning teachers like him. He was an award-winning teacher, and he still admitted that the lessons he taught were not the ones parents thought he taught. And I encourage you to go back and look for my series of videos. It's a read along with me series where I go through the chapters and I comment on them specifically because you'll understand this concept even more. But I wanted to make a separate video today responding to this article to give some context to how I think public schools today are feeding the pathology of passivity. Now, before I get into that explanation, I'd like to ask you, please, to consider subscribing to this channel if you value this sort of content. It helps me quite a lot. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I make new content. Like the video, comment on the video, share the video with other people who are interested in this topic, and consider joining my locals to speak with me more in detail about these topics. That's at thereasonwelearn.locals.com. So let's get into this. This article is about a study conducted by people at the American Enterprise Institute. They looked at some of the major milestones that people go through on the way to adulthood or even in early adulthood that create the social order. Things like marriage, childbearing, dating, driving, the things that take you from, a child to a young adult to an adult and that create order and structure to our society in a good way. Now, usually social science studies will come back and tell you this is how many out-of-wedlock births there have been, this is how many abortions, this is how many divorces, and so forth. And for a long time, those were some dismal statistics. And we would look at the downsides. We would look at, oh my gosh, this many teenagers are dying in auto wrecks. There are this many kids having babies too soon, and out-of-wedlock births, and too many divorces, and so on, right? So the results of this study show that a lot of those numbers are down. Fewer teenagers dying in car accidents, fewer out-of-wedlock births. The abortion rate is down for the first time since 1973. The divorce rate is down for the first time in a very long time. So you might be tempted to look at that and say, oh, wow, that's great. We must be doing something right. Except sometimes these good things are also evidence of something not so good. So What does the study identify? Well, fewer people are getting married in the first place, so that might account for the fewer divorces. Fewer people are dating in the first place, or joining up or socializing in person at all, so that might account for the fewer out of wedlock births, and it might account for the lower rate of abortions and so on. Fewer teens dying in car wrecks. Well, not as many are getting their license in the first place, and getting your license is pretty integral to launching out of your parents' house and not being dependent on them to get places, or not being dependent on living in an urban area because you have to ride public transportation, and being dependent on the jobs that are there, and so forth and so on. So young people are not doing the things that young people used to be really eager to do. Drive, date, get married, have kids, move out, all that stuff. Just not happening. Doesn't seem to be of interest. And so then the question becomes, if the goal of education overall is to be independent and pursue your happiness and go out there and make a life for yourself as an individual, what if you don't have anything you want to pursue? What if you don't even know what you want to pursue? And what if the reason you don't know what you want to pursue is that you've been sequestered in an institution for 13 years that did a really bad job of empowering you to even think of yourself as a self with a pursuit of happiness that is all your own, and also did a really poor job of equipping you to pursue it if you had one? What if? Okay. Now, they don't specifically highlight that in the article, but they do bring up a couple of points. So I'm going to read you a couple of points, and then I encourage you to read the rest of the article for yourself. The pathologies of passivity are far more fundamental challenges to flourishing because they strike deeper and earlier than the dangers of unruliness. Habits and institutions of restraint can work like sculptors of the social order, selectively chipping away at our wild, boisterous pursuit of happiness to shape it into more beautiful forms of energetic human action. But what if we fail to act on our longings to begin with? What if there's nothing to restrain, and so no raw material for the sculptor to work with? The right to pursue happiness won't do us much good if we don't exercise it. Right? What if we don't do it? Our best traditions grasp this danger. We think of the moral law enunciated in the Hebrew Bible, for instance, as a set of restraints on our appetites, articulated most concisely as a series of thou shalt not injunctions. But well before those laws for man and society, God's very first commandment to human beings was a response to the risks of inertness and passivity. Be fruitful and multiply. Jewish mothers ever since have demanded much the same. When they implore their kids to settle down, they're not asking them to stop, but to start, to get on with life. We have to worry about a failure to get going before we can worry about the dangers of going too far and pushing too hard. The dangers of inertness, therefore, tend to displace the dangers of recalcitrance when the two coexist. And they point out, no single cause can explain this growing challenge of passivity. It is thoroughly global, for one thing. The decline of marriage and childbearing is much further along in much of Europe and Asia, and can be seen not only in the developed world, but also in some of the poorest nations on the planet. Okay? And even if we do try to explain the problem in an American dialect, its causes add up to a kind of multifarious portrait of the downsides of our way of life. Social inertness is surely a response in part to the breakdown of the traditional social order itself. The waning of life scripts provided by family, religion, and widespread traditional social norms leaves younger Americans less sure of where to step and how to build our lives. And here it is, the kicker. Among other things, this likely contributes to the growing tendency to look to politics for such scripts, and so to seek more assertive and moralistic social agendas, whether of the left or right. The case for such agendas easily becomes too strident and desperate, and it runs the risk of drawing some among the young into a depraved and vicious vitalism. But it is rooted in the valid perception of a moral void that is surely at the bottom of much of the pathological passivity we now encounter. And I do encourage you to read the rest of it. But where did this void come from? Why do our kids perceive a void? And that's where I'm going to argue public school comes in, because the entire structure of it, the lessons it actually teaches, are lessons that there is a void and the kids are left grasping for something to fill it as a consequence of exposure to these teachings and That's why you need to get your kids away from them. You just need to get them out before they're damaged in this way. Your child came into this world capable of being fulfilled, capable of doing the things as an adult they would need to do to thrive. But they need the right structures and the right stimuli, and they're not going to get them in public school. And here is why. Reason number one, public schools do not teach reading properly. It's so basic, it's so fundamental, but it is so important. Literacy is the foundational skill of all learning, It is the continuation of the acquisition of language. The written word is power. When you do not read well, you are hamstrung. You are intellectually kneecapped. How are you going to go out and interact with a world that is primarily verbal and access information on your own independently, not because someone else gave it to you, if you cannot read? Even if you use devices to their hilt, you're going to need to read well with comprehension, deep understanding, not just for the words and the sentence structure, but the import. What does this mean? What does this mean I don't know? You need to understand it in the fuller context of other words and other written works. And our kids are not taught to read properly. They're using 3Q and look-see or look-say rather, and they're not using phonics. And that is why we have close to 70% of our students who cannot read proficiently at the end of third grade. That is why dyslexia rates are soaring. It is not because we have so many neurologically challenged children. That would be an epidemic worth talking about, but that's not what's happening. It's not organic. It is man-made. There are plenty of kids who organically have dyslexia, but not all of them by a long shot. That would be what I'd call dysthesia. But most parents aren't even aware of what's going on. They're told everything's fine, don't panic, everything will be fine. And then after third grade, after those tests, they're told, oopsie daisy, everything isn't fine. Your child is not reading well, we need remediation, or maybe they don't even tell you at all. You might not be told, because then they'd have to do something and that would cost money. And so instead of addressing the deficit in the child, they rearranged the chairs on the deck of the Titanic, so they lower the standards that would be expected of the child and basically reward the man-made passivity of, I'm not a very good reader, so you're going to need to tell me what to do. I'm not going to initiate reading a new book about something that might inspire me or enlighten me or whatever, because I don't feel very confident with reading. I'm not going to initiate doing anything outside the box, because why would I? I don't even know what is outside the box because I can't read. All right. And so begins the process of being externally motivated. Children know what they aren't able to do that is the skill they need in school. They know where they're weak. And even if they can't articulate it, even if they can't go home and say, Mom, I can't read, or the reason I'm struggling in school is I don't read well, or the reason I'm acting out in school, or I'm frustrated, or I'm having meltdowns and temper tantrums, or I'm just withdrawing within myself and wanting to listen to music all the time, is I can't do the fundamental thing that school requires in order to be academically successful. It doesn't mean they aren't aware of it. And the school for sure is aware of it, but they're busy working on how to conceal that from you and how to adapt what they're doing to make up for it. Let's dumb down the grades. Let's reduce what we expect. Let's have check boxes and multiple choice instead of, large fill in the blanks and essay answers. Let's make sure that we do audiobooks. Let's keyboard instead of write, because they don't read very well. So they also don't spell very well, and they don't understand grammar. And we can't even teach grammar, because if they don't read well, then they're certainly not going to understand what a sentence is. So we'll back off on the grammar, and we'll tell the parents it'll come organically. No, it won't, but they'll tell you that. So fourth grade comes and they don't actively teach grammar and composition. And we're going to keyboard because their handwriting is really poor, because we didn't work on that either. And so the child starts to be more and more and more externally motivated. They're a box checker. They're a space filler. I do what I need to do and no more. Why would you initiate if you don't feel confident in your ability to do the thing after you do that? or if it's simply not rewarded, because it isn't. Like I said, the school adapts to what it hasn't done well, and now there are no incentives provided to the child to think outside the box, read their own books. They don't read fiction at all in many schools. They read very, very little of it. It's mostly nonfiction, it's passages, it's on a screen, it's very boring. So the next message they get is, knowledge is boring. Knowledge is this thing that I just have to like demonstrate I know a little bit about in school and then forget about the rest of it. I just have to get through the school day. So school and learning becomes this thing you just have to get through, you just have to do. It's not a pleasant experience, either because you're not very good at it or because it's boring. But it's still external motivation. You're not really motivated to do more than is expected of you when the thing expected of you is already dull and hard. So the kids then start to play the game. These kids start to play a game. The game is, how little can I do to get by? How little can I do to get the C, if that's what they're comfortable with? If their parents expect an A, how little do I have to do to get the A? And the teachers obligingly make it easier and easier and easier. It's late. It's okay. I'll take it. Oh, there's mistakes. It's okay. We're not counting for grammar. We're not counting for spelling. It's just important that you turned it in. It's important that you put your name on the paper. You know, the minimum grade is a C. We don't fail anybody. I mean, parents are none the wiser. Parents think, oh, look, my kid's an A student. They don't know the A doesn't really mean anything. They're not sitting there quizzing their kid at the dinner table about what they ought to know. And in many cases, the parents don't know what they ought to know at that point. They just take the school's word for it. They get a map test that says your kid is doing right there in the middle of the pack, and they think that means they're proficient, but it doesn't. Not even close. So the kids play the game. They play it successfully one way or the other. They might play a social game, so they're not doing the academic game, but they're playing the social game. They're popular. They're the class clown. They get all out of attention. They're sucking the oxygen out of the room, so everybody has to pay attention to them, and that's a win for them. Maybe that's the external motivation they have, is to be the center of attention. Personality comes into play here too, right? I mean, some kids want to fly below the radar, some don't. So maybe they're playing the social, maybe they're playing the academic game, but they're still playing a game. And it's not rooted in, someday I'm going to be a grown-up and I'm going to want to do this, 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 and this. Not super specific, but I'm going to want to do these things. And so learning has a point. No, it's just, I got to get through today. It's all very concrete, right? Today, I've got to play this game to get through today. I've got to play this game to get through this class. I've got to play this game to not get bullied. I've got to, whatever it is, I'm playing a game and I'm going to do the minimum. It's human nature to do the minimum for the maximum result, right? But what you need to understand as parents is, what is the desired result in school? Following what the teacher says to do, completing the tasks given to the student, completing them in a way the teacher wants them completed. Not challenging the teacher, not doing anything to disrupt their equilibrium, not taking a risk. And when you add to that they are cut off from the outside world of challenges, so they don't see their parents striving, they don't see adults in the real world, pursuing their happiness. They might see on social media, but that's a sanitized version of it. They don't see the ugly, messy process of earning a living. They don't see the ugly, messy process of how things get from point A to point B in the supply chain. They don't see that airbrushing and filters or whatever make that person look the way they look. They just see the end result, which of course is packaged and marketed to look perfect, which probably contributes to their passivity even more, because they think, oh my God, that seems insurmountable, because they know perfectly well what they're doing in school isn't perfect. And they also know that the teachers are rewarding them even though it isn't. They know these things, and they lose respect for the adults in the role because they know you're full of crap. They know you don't expect much. They know you're giving them grades they don't really deserve. They know this. Even without anything to compare it to, they instinctively know they're checking boxes and playing a game. But they're okay with it because there's no motivation or incentive to do anything different. You're happy with the A, yay, that you clap. The teacher's happy. Their peers aren't making fun of them. All is well, right? But they're still living in the land of passivity. They're not really doing anything that requires them to muster up what I would call, gumption or grit. They don't even have to persevere through difficulty. Somebody will give them the grade anyway. Somebody will say it's okay that it's late. Somebody will say it's not your fault, it's society. Didn't decenter the whiteness enough. We didn't decenter the maleness enough. We didn't, it is not your fault. So that comes to the next point, which is that our kids who have now been taught, from at least third grade, but usually kindergarten on, that they are playing this sort of passive game where they just respond to prompts, right? The kids are now marinating in existential dread. The lessons they learn about the outside world are don't believe your lying eyes. And to a certain extent, that's good. Okay, social media is fake, fine. But don't believe anything your parents tell you. Don't believe what the traditional world says. The reality is it's an oppressive world. It's a scary world of victims and victors. The only way you're going to succeed is and it starts to feel insurmountable. And think about what I read about the political narratives and how attractive that would become. If you don't have skills, you don't know how to do anything but play the game that's laid out before you by other people. You're good at that. Maybe you've even mastered that. Maybe you are the foremost expert. You are an honor student and you have, filled in all the dots exactly right. And the teacher thinks you're fantastic. And even your peers think you're wonderful because you have figured out the social language and you are just, playing the game perfectly, but it's not your game. You didn't design it. The school did. The teacher did. The peer group did. Other people did. And that was encouraged. It was encouraged for you to fit in. It was encouraged for you to be part of that system, to play that game. So you're sitting there waiting for someone to hand you another game board. And along come leftists with their ideology and their protest rallies and their protest causes and their, cancel culture. And there's your new game. And the rules are very simple. Here's the script. Say these things, do these things, hold others to play by the same rules. You're now the gamekeeper. They just deputize more and more people to go out there and be, the game master, the gamekeeper, etc. And then people who have not been trained to step outside the game and do anything different are left with the following choices. Play a game that I deep down don't really like and don't really want to play, though I don't know why. It just feels wrong. But, if I don't do it, I won't get a job. I won't have any friends. I won't meet anybody. So I'll be active in that way. I'll be visibly active. I'll be physically active. I'll be verbally active. Of course, intellectually, I'm not. I'm a drone. Or I will be passive. I will sit at home. I won't have any friends, or I'll have very few friends because I'm afraid to go out there because I don't know how to find like-minded people who aren't playing that game that I don't want to play. I don't know how to figure my way around all of this stuff. So I won't leave home. I won't get my driver's license. I'll just get the easy job at the fast food place because, that doesn't take a lot of thought. I'm told what to do every minute of every day. And I'll just chug along, not really thriving, but at least I won't be part of, those protest rallies and stuff. And that's what you end up having. And then how are you going to date anybody? How are you going to get married, have children, have a career if you want one? How are you going to flourish if those are your two choices? Play this game with the only skills you've got, and what minimal reading you have at that point can read a script. You can repeat, talking points. That you can do. But you don't know how to question them. You don't know how to argue with the people playing the game. You don't know how to design a new game. That's for sure. What are you going to do? So that's the damage that school does. Starting with not teaching reading, moving on to, encouraging box checking and script reading, pleasing behaviors. Add in SEL and some of the new stuff, which, teaches that boundaries are toxic. You're supposed to be open all the time. And if you're not, what are you hiding? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? These kids might even make up problems just to have something to talk about because otherwise you don't really fit into the world of victimology. And social contagion is a real thing too. And you're playing the game or you're not playing the game, like I said. You're cut off from the real world that could challenge any of this gaslighting. And you don't have the skills on your own to figure out that it's a lie. They fill you with existential dread, and here we are. Here we are. Brain damaged, emotionally damaged, intellectually damaged. It's something you need to think about. It's something you need to think about if you're going to stay in. How are you going to fight this? I personally think it's nearly impossible, but maybe you have a way. I don't know what it is. It's going to take you a lot of time. You're going to be counter parenting with the school. Having counter parented with an actual parent, I could tell you that's extraordinarily difficult. I've done it with a parent and with a school. It was impossible. I wasn't able to do it, even with all the knowledge I have and all the understanding I have of these problems and how to do it right. I still couldn't do it. And I'm facing that with my own children. My own children are living, breathing examples of the damage. What they were when they were homeschooled early on, they were thriving. They were thriving. Then I put them in public school through no fault of my own, really. I didn't choose it. I was forced, literally, through divorce. And in the time they spent in public school, they were damaged enough that now, even out of public school, I have to work harder with them to overcome this passivity. They are brilliant kids. They are proficient readers, at least the older two are. The one who was taught to read by school isn't. Living example of what happens when you're not. But to too great a degree, they're box checkers. To too great a degree, they follow what the teacher tells them they want to do. They have teachers in an online academy because that's as far out of school as I was allowed to get. If I were doing it on my own, I would have done things very differently, but here we are. And I don't know that I can undo the damage that was done. They're going to have a harder road because of it when they started off with so much promise. My eldest was 8, going into public school, reading well above a high school level, doing math 2 grade levels ahead. My next youngest was doing math 2 levels ahead, reading at, I think, about a 6th or 7th grade level going into 1st grade. All those gains were lost. All their sense of self-confidence, the kind of self-confidence that inspired them to come to me and say, Mom, I want to cook my own breakfast. Can I have a step stool so I can reach the stove? Mom, I want to help you with the laundry. How do I do it? Mom, can I help walk the dog? Can I do this? Can I do that? I want to do it too. Look, I came up with a way to make my very own kaleidoscope. Hey, Mom, I want to write a book. And she did. My eldest daughter wrote a chapter book. She dictated it. She copied it, with her hands. Then she illustrated it. It was awesome. That's a lot of confidence. That's a lot of risk taking. That's a lot of internal motivation, internal locus of control, which was encouraged in my home by me when I was educating them. And it all went away. Mom, why are we doing baby math? Mom, it's really too easy. Mom, I'm super bored. Mom, why are they making me tutor the kids who can't read in 3rd grade, my 3rd grade class? Why am I can't, I want to read my own books. They won't let me. Mom, I'm sitting here in my 9th grade honors English class and everybody's listening to an audiobook. I'm trying to read my own book inside the desk and my teacher came and took it away from me and punished me for reading while I'm supposed to be listening to an audiobook in my honors English class. Mom, they won't stop bullying me because I keep asking questions. I keep raising my hand to ask questions and they're calling me teacher's pet and they're tripping me when I walk in the classroom and I keep getting hurt. Mom, they won't stop it. What do I do? Mom, stop asking me to read. I hate reading. I hate reading. I hate the reading teacher. I hate everything about reading. I'm not reading a book. Stop making me read. And these are just random samplings of things that my bright, thriving, successful children were saying after they went to public school. Public school damages because public school creates passivity. And it's not just in your children either, it's you too. No, I'm happy to see so many parents finally are like, whoa, I need to get active. But for a very, very long time, public school persuaded you didn't need to do anything. In fact, it's not even that you don't need to do anything. You can't because you don't know. You're not the expert we are. Just sit back, shut up, and we'll take care of it. But my child can't read. I think they should be reading by now. No, it's fine. We'll let you know if there's a problem. It's fine. We'll let you know. It's fine. We'll let you know. 3rd grade comes and goes. It's very clear now your child doesn't read. It's called the wait to fail policy, by the way. A lot of schools observe it. So we have a problem with his reading. I asked you 2 years ago, why didn't you tell me? Well, because we needed to wait for their benefit, not yours or your child's. But now what are you going to do? Now your kid hates to read. Your kid sees reading as an opportunity to fail. Reading is drudgery. Reading is painful. Reading is embarrassing. They don't see it as power, a window on the world. No, not at all. But you were told to sit back and wait, and, you were told to be passive. And for many of you, you were just encouraged to be passive by life. You have to work, you have to do things. School said, we'll take care of it, so you did. The passivity, compounding the passivity, and you probably didn't even notice. Homework was done. And we don't have homework. We don't have any homework. We don't have any homework. We did it in class. We did it in class. We did the assignment in class. We don't have homework. You don't have any homework? No, we don't have any homework. Where are your books? I don't see any books. Yeah, we don't use books anymore. We have a Chromebook. I left this Chromebook at school because we can't take it home. They're dependent on the school to learn. They're dependent on being in the classroom to learn. They don't learn that, there's homework has one benefit is that, learning continues. I don't like busy work. I don't think homework for its own sake is good, but it does teach study skills over time. The kid does learn that, learning is a lifelong thing that goes on after I leave the classroom. Classroom is where I, go to talk with other learners, to work with my teacher, to build my skills, to get some help. And then I come home and I practice, the messy, ugly side of learning, the practice side. Nope, don't get to see that. It's just the doing. It's just the filling in the blanks, the finishing the assignment, the turning it in. And then by the time they actually have to do homework, high school, sometimes middle school, depends where you are, then they're just like, they're adrift. And they do the bare minimum. And you look at their homework assignments, you're like, what the frick? I mean, half the words are misspelled and it's like impossible to read it. And, it's messy and you look like you phoned it in. Like, it doesn't matter. I got an A last time. Leave me alone. My teacher thinks mine's the best in the class. And what are you going to say then? What are you going to say? I don't care if yours in the best in class is not good enough. Your kid's like, but it is good enough. The teacher said it's more than good enough. It's an A. Leave me alone. Like, they don't even understand the benefit of doing anything in depth or of doing something really, really well. There's no payoff. The game doesn't reward that. You don't get, extra points for doing it as well as it could possibly be done. They're just going complete. I've seen teachers grade something with it as an A because it was complete. It was just done. I tutor kids and the quality of their work is not even close to what it ought to be for their ability, for their intellectual capacity. But they're satisfied. But that was fine for the teacher. The teacher said I just had 3 paragraphs, 3 sentences each, and it was fine. And I had a conclusion, and it's fine. I just had to have a page. I filled the page, and there it is, and it's fine. And I'm like, then why are you here? Well, my mom thinks I should be here. I'm like, well, so do I, and I started explaining what's wrong with the writing, and they're like, the teacher was fine with it. But my teacher said that was fine. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. Fine is a big word in the land of passivity that is the public school. When I would assume you want more than fine. Fine is not thriving. Fine is not independent, flourishing, getting ready to launch. Fine doesn't launch. So I hope you read this whole article, and I hope you take it to heart, and I hope you consider what is happening in public school, how it does work, what it encourages, and what is not happening there. Irrespective of critical theory, irrespective of SEL, all of which are just more toxicity on top of all of this. It's a very passive environment. It damages your children, and the damage is really difficult to fix. They will stumble through their young adulthood, and it will be way more painful than it has to be. Not to mention lonelier. So, thank you for watching. If you find this content useful, again, I hope you will consider subscribing, liking, commenting, sharing. That's the video.